Hello everyone and welcome to DNQ Football, where today we are looking at my personal team of the tournament from the recent OFC World Cup qualifiers. Now I have included New Zealand players in this. This is a Minnow Nation channel. New Zealand aren't a Minnow Nation, I get that, but it is just my team of the tournament. There are a few, I've restricted it to just a few New Zealand players. They did win the final 5-0. So I felt like we had to get a few in there. But generally speaking, it's a celebration of the players for other nations. How many other nations? You'll find out. But this is just the team of the tournament. We're going to be flicking between me and then this screen here where you can see I will one by one remove these boxes and you will get to see what my team of the tournament is. If you disagree with any of my selections, feel free to put something in the comments. I'm also going to name a few players that were close but didn't quite make it into the team. Because, you know, I'm only picking 11. I've gone with the 4-3-3 system that most sides played. But of course there are players for the other teams that didn't play. One thing I'm going to say from the get-go, there are no Tahitians in this team. I know they got to the semi-final, but there are no Tahitians in this team. They did play 2 lose 2, and that's the reason why. So that's kind of why. And then obviously I was in Doha. I've seen these teams play. I've seen them in action. And these are my personal starting 11. So let's get straight into it then. You can still see me. I'm up here in the corner. But the main focus is this screen here. And we're starting between the sticks, of course. Well, there was only ever going to be one man to take that spot. And it was, of course, Warazan. For Papua New Guinea, he was hilarious at times with some of his saves, some of his slide tackles, but he was part of that insanely good PNG defensive line that saw them reach the semi-finals before they were knocked out by the Solomon Islands in a very close and competitive game. I thought Papua New Guinea were just so tactically astute at the back, and any time that defence was breached, Warazan was, for me, by far the best keeper. The kind of runner-up to this spot for me would have to be Mango. I thought that he made a number of good saves in the semi-final and the final, but they did still concede a number of goals in games where they were really, really tested, and for that reason it would have to be Warazan for me between the sticks. In at right back is our first Solomon Islander, and it is Ian Kalu. I thought he was fantastic. In every game he played, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. Solomon Islands obviously had less games to play, one less game, with the Vanuatu game not going ahead. And of course they did reach the final where they were bested 5-0 by New Zealand. And of course Kalu is part of that defence that did lose 5-0. I get that. But for his attacking play, I thought he was a brilliant, brilliant defender. I could, of course, have picked New Zealand wing-backs in this system. I wanted to try and keep it as much non-New Zealand as possible. And if I looked at the rest of the teams, for me, Kalu was streets ahead in that right-back position. The next player is a New Zealander, and he didn't play the final, but Winston Reid has to be in the team of the tournament because he is just so, so good. He didn't really get out of second gear at any point. He's just a brilliant player, you know, captain New Zealand in some of their games. He has to be in that team. I didn't think that there were 2 centre-backs from the other teams that really kind of came close to getting in an 11 for me. No one gets in that team ahead of Winston Reid for that right centre-back position. He can play as part of a 4, he can play as part of a 3. I don't need to tell you why Winston Reid is in my team of the tournament, because he's, you know, on paper one of the best players there. But yes, I appreciate there are other players I could have gone for. And probably a shout out to Ian Gari, who as part of that Solomon Islands team was a player again that I thought played well. I thought he was probably the best defender in that team. And also a shout out to Felix Comalong, who could have also got in that team as well, but I chose Winston Reid. That makes it abundantly clear who my left-sided centre-back is, which is of course Alwyn Comalong. He would actually also be my captain of this team, captain of Papua New Guinea. Brilliant player, part of that, not only part of that defence that was so solid for most of the tournament, but if you actually watch the game against Fiji, the moment the red card is produced, he goes, I'm now a striker. And he goes from being centre-back as part of a defensive unit to just roaming the pitch, and because he knew that he was one of the best players, and he was just popping passes. And if you actually look at one of the goals, I think that it's the goal that Kepo scored. Fiji are on the attack, and Komolong's nowhere to be seen, and he actually picks up the ball in central midfield and then plays it forward, because it's not part of that defence anymore. As soon as that red card comes, he tactically knows, I'm not part of this defence, I need to be part of this attacking unit to get us back in the game, and he was pivotal in that. Of course, he did score as well in the semi-final, a game that they did ultimately lose, but he was absolutely fantastic throughout the tournament, and so gets the left centre-back, and for me, the captain position in this team. He is joined by another Papua New Guinea defender, and it is Irem. I apologise about the pronunciation if that's not quite right. He was brilliant. Upayega played their first group game at left back, and then he came in and he was really, really solid. Again, could I put a New Zealand left back, left wing back in here? Of course I could. I didn't think that the Solomon Islands left back Prince was particularly great, and actually in the semi-final I thought that Kepo exploited him really, really consistently. And so I looked at the other teams and I thought, who could get in there ahead of ARM? And there was no one. So he has to take that position. I did think that when New Zealand went to the three at the back system, the left wing backs that they played in the various different games were phenomenal. But of course, we're trying to go with the Minnow Nation slant on this. So it has to be the PNG number 23. The second New Zealander, though, who takes up a place in this team for me is Clayton Lewis. He's a monster of a player. Of course, missed the final due to club duties, but he was fantastic. He was absolutely fantastic for New Zealand. I believe he got man of the match in their opening game where they beat Papua New Guinea. A brilliant player. Didn't break onto the international scene too long ago. Obviously, it's difficult for players in this region because they play so few games. But since kind of, the introduction, if they are playing a system where there's a requirement for that holding player, he's absolutely pivotal in that. And I pick him to be probably one of the players looking into the game against Costa Rica that will be absolutely essential should they play that defensive midfield role. But he's also got that attacking creativity as well with that wicked left foot to distribute crosses and cross-field passes. So Clayton Lewis locks up that defensive midfield position. For sides in the OFC region, I do believe that there is a bit more of a 5-5 formation. You look at this is a 4-3-3 with a defensive midfielder and two attacking midfielders. Actually, these teams tend to play a lot more 5-5. So the other player that I should mention for defensive midfield is of course the Solomon Islander, who I always forget his name, William Kamasi, a young player with a lot of potential in the future, but just didn't quite do enough for me to kind of pip Lewis to that spot. But he again for the Solomon Islands would be pivotal to the kind of 5-5 that they end up playing. So now we finished the defensive section, we move on to their sort of attacking creativity. And at right attacking midfield, for me, is a versatile player. He can do everything, and in many ways he can do no wrong. The captain of the Solomon Islands, Micah Leia Alafa, he played at right wing, he played on the left, he played left wing, played striker, all part of that system. The Solomon Islands are so good at the tiki-taka intricacies that they can get along that setup that they have, that 5-5 that I speak about. For me, absolutely pivotal, had to be in the team. We sort of shoehorned him in a little bit at right attacking midfield. I do appreciate that. And other players that kind of got close. I think that Krishna played more of an attacking midfield role, so he could be another player that you could mention. But for me, Micah had to be in there. And he is alongside Alwyn. How do you pronounce it? Alwyn, number 17 for the Solomon Islanders. Brilliant player, technical ability, so solid. One of the only players that actually kind of linked defence to attack for the Solomon Islands. It played so well, unfortunately injured for part of the final, so couldn't see out the rest of the tournament. But he was amazing, particularly in the semi-final as well, where his brace helped them beat Papua New Guinea. So he makes up my midfield trio in the team of the tournament. And we stick with the Solomon Islands for right wing as well, and Rafa Liai has to take that right wing role. Before I get into him, a shout out to Ati Kepo, who could have pushed for that position, but based on performances in what ended up being sort of the quarter-final against Tahiti, the semi-final where that goal was just a joke, and even in the final he looked like the best player for Solomon Islands. Still a teenager, this guy. Brilliant, brilliant player, number 20 for the Solomon Islands. It needs no explanation as to why he is in my team of the tournament at right wing. On the left, well, it had to be him, didn't it? Tommy Semi. At times, he frustrated me throughout this tournament because I do believe that he had a little more to give at times, but he was still absolutely pivotal. The key player for Papua New Guinea in an attacking sense, and him and Kepo were pivotal. Gunemba didn't do as much, you know, I said all throughout the tournament, he frustrated me a little bit, the number 7, because he just didn't quite link up the players I wanted. But Tommy Semi, absolutely pivotal, scored the absolutely fantastic goal as well for, well, he was just pivotal throughout the whole tournament, wasn't he, really, Tommy Semi? And of course, in that 1-0 win that they got over New Caledonia, he was absolutely pivotal in that. So he makes up the left wing in this team. And the central figure to finish things off is Chris Wood. Well, it's a little bit of an anticlimax, isn't it, that it's Chris Wood up front, but he has to be in there, unfortunately. Sairusi Nalabu would, of course, be kind of second rate for me in terms of another player to pick instead of Chris Wood. And I also think that Hoses Nawo played very well for the Solomon Islands throughout this tournament, but it had to be Chris Wood, New Zealand's all-time top scorer now, filling that position, deserving a spot in an official or even a D&Q unofficial team of the tournament. So that's it. That is my team of the tournament. Let's run through it one more time. In goal, Warasan for Papua New Guinea, a brilliant goalkeeper. My defence, Kalu, Reid, Komalong and Arem. Absolutely fantastic defensive work from Papua New Guinea. Attacking work from Ian Kalu of the Solomon Islands and Winston Reid. Well, it's Winston Reid. The midfield 3, Clayton Lewis, Micah, Leah Alafa and Alwyn Hu, or How, or however you pronounce it, as he's come to known on D&Q football, making up that trio in midfield. And the front 3 of Rafa Leai, Chris Wood and Tommy Semi, completing the D&Q team of the tournament for the OFC World Cup qualifiers. As I said at the start, are there any of those that you disagree with? Are there any of those players you're thinking they should be nowhere near that team? This player should be in it instead? Or generally, do you think I've got it absolutely bang on? Whichever one of those it is, the thing you need to absolutely do right now is hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and of course, comment as well. It's been D&Q Football, it's been me, this is a terrible outro, but you know what to do, and we will see you next time.